So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's the first of the sessions of the Sandpit. We have, as I say, we're starting today, and this is very much a warm-up for the work to come. And as you know, I think you're all aware of what the workshop's about. It's to develop research ideas together that in the end can be submitted as concept notes or full proposals to various organizations that fund researchers. The specific program we have in mind is GCRF, the Global Challenge Research Fund, which is a pretty new UK fund. It's been going a couple of years. And in a bit, I'll tell you a bit more about that. But the idea is that we come together, as Alex has said, online, as a pretty mixed bag of people. The focus of the workshop in sustainable intensification of aquaculture is quite clear, but your backgrounds are much more diverse than that. And that's absolutely on purpose, because the fund thing, and I think many of us think that we actually have to work outside our aquaculture bubble if we're going to really create interesting new research approaches and ideas that can really bring aquaculture into supporting poorer people around the world. And that's very much the focus of GCRF. The fund is there to fund research that leads to impacts. And those impacts have to be focusing on some of the poorest people in low and medium income countries. So that's the sort of where we're going. We hope by the end of our workshop, our Sandpit, which of course the main 5 days is ending in December, we'll have some pretty good concept notes that are ready to go, as it were, to submit for upcoming calls in the GCRF program, or indeed others. We're not limiting it to that. And our aim is to work intensively over the coming days and weeks to do that, and doing it in a very sort of participatory way, we hope, as far as that's possible online. So there's going to be things we can do online that we couldn't do face to face, and vice versa. So really just like to welcome you, and perhaps before I sign off and hand over, just to introduce you to the people on the sort of organizing group. You've met Alex. As you know, we're focusing on 2 countries, Vietnam and Bangladesh, and I'll explain why in a minute. But we have Tida in Ho Chi Minh City from Vietnam, who's led the core group there, and Mamun in Bangladesh. Thanks very much for them for all their hard work so far. And we have John Bostock, Alex and Wendy Maltinsky in Sterling that have formed a core group to put this Sandpit together. So thanks to them, and I hope we go well during this first day. The Sandpit is about playing, really. It's about bringing ideas together. So, bridging the gap between the research we do and it having an impact, getting it into practice, getting it into use. So how can the bridge be gapped? The gap be bridged? Can we do that cost effectively? And can it be aimed at benefiting a target group, perhaps the most vulnerable poor people? This is what GCRF wants to achieve, and not just for a short period, but can we do that sustainably? So the research we do, what are the longer term outcomes that lead to real impacts? Next slide. So Bangladesh and Vietnam have been picked because Asian megadeltas have, I think, particular challenges. And remember, this is a global challenge fund. We're looking for areas where we've really got to work with new knowledge to make a difference. And we think they're particularly suitable for fish and an aquaculture focused research, because fish is so critical to nutritional security. They're highly populated, low and medium income countries, and they're dependent on staples such as rice. And it's where aquaculture has become established as an alternative and adaptive use of land. There's a high requirement for sustainable intensification, and we can talk about that at a point later in the process. But that's basically getting more for less. How can we produce more aquatic farmed animals with less environmental impacts and with greater societal benefit? And both of these countries, particularly the large delta areas, which is most of the countries in Bangladesh's case, and certainly most of southern Vietnam, in Vietnam's case, are very vulnerable to climate change impacts. So the research should address these issues. That's why these countries, your countries, are such a good focus for this type of grant. Thanks, John. So as we can see, we could have worked in Myanmar. The work that we will do, that we will conceptualize for Vietnam and Bangladesh, there may be differences, but what we're looking for is links between them because they've got these commonalities. And of course, the outcomes would be more broadly applicable to other mega deltas around the world. Thanks, John. So the GCRF fund wants to, it has different challenge areas. To the right here, there are 12 challenge areas, and these overlapping sort of areas of equitable access to sustainable development, sustainable economies and societies, and human rights, good governance and social justice. And of course, many project ideas, concepts will have elements of all of those. I think secure food systems is probably going to be a focus, but I'm sure health and well-being will come in. I'm sure sustainable livelihoods and sustainable production and consumption will be really important. And of course, with an ultimate aim that maybe inequality and poverty reduction can be addressed. And GCRF, like many global funders, want to make sure that there is equity of output. There's a good gender focus on the work that we do. So if we look at food systems, secure food systems, that means looking at delivering safe and nutritious food, having resilience to climate change and variability, trying to reduce loss, thinking about how aquaculture could be part of a circular economy, and thinking of and planning that aquaculture moves within that sort of broader landscape of thinking around food. You know, we're producing food. Sometimes we forget that, but you know, we've got to make sure that what we're doing is seated in this larger perspective. Thanks, John. If we want examples of successful projects that have been funded, they've been through a process of researchers like ourselves coming together, brainstorming ideas, coming up with good concepts that worked up into proposals that have been successful. Here are three, and we'll make this available if you want to go on and look at what the components of those projects are. I picked three that have got, I think, resonance for different reasons. So Costa Rica, there's a dairy product there that's looked at how they can optimize environmental and economic outcomes of what is a really important sector for them there. In a country that's battling to maintain its environmental condition, to make sure that tourism as a major earner in that country can be maintained and improved further. The Bangladesh example is one of a circular economy, really. How can sustainability improve in terms of soil use through using local fertilizer sources? And the third one is an example of a project about a food system, but not about production. It's about the value chain and adding value to byproducts. So if we're coming up with projects around the aquaculture space, they don't necessarily have to be on farm. They can be at other points in the value chain, different insights, and taking forward, developing new knowledge around those areas as well. So this particular one looked at how cocoa pod husk could be transformed into valuable resources, for example. Next slide, please, John. So theory of change guides the way GCRF like to see their projects being situated, and they will fund processes that lead to what they hope have direct influences. And that might mean that to get information that comes out of a research project into being used, we have to work with stakeholders, we have to build networks, we have to take our research results, translate, demonstrate, and apply. But there's also a sphere of what you might call indirect influence, which is a further outcome, further along the line in time, where we're actually, through our research, through working through this direct influence, actually creating conditions for more transformational change. So an example of that might be the growing of striped catfish in Vietnam. South Vietnam is of such a level now, it's totally changed rural lives, not just those involved in farming and processing and trading, but society itself. Now, within a project, we won't be able to do that, but what GCRF would like to see is how our work can fit into that process of development. Finally, where GCRFs impact themselves are at this higher order level, which is very much at the level of contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And so that's a further longer term outcome and impact. Again, not something that can be achieved within a normal GCRF project, but one in which the results are part of a train of development that will lead to those longer term outcomes and impact. Thanks, John. So GCRF funding can support initial research and innovation, R&I, that gives us outputs or results. And within the time of a project, now there's different types of GCRF support. So some support the specific research, some support network development, some support how that research can start to be used by broader groups. And certainly what we want to be seeing is shorter term outcomes that are measurable and are clear and obvious and well received by the people who they're intended to support. The key elements of any research and innovation project is there's got to therefore be a strong likelihood of societal impact. There's got to be a problem and solution focused approach. So it's not just a blue sky idea. Where's the problem? Where's the challenge? And how can this project, this set of research activities lead towards solutions? It's got to be excellent in terms of research. These projects are funded ultimately by our research councils. They're reviewed, peer-reviewed, very in an in-depth way, to the normal way. And they've got to be a step change. What are we doing that's going to be different, that perhaps brings knowledge sets together, working in an interdisciplinary, state-of-the-art way? And clearly, we're not just doing this in the UK or in Europe, we're doing it with and for the countries that are present on this meeting, Vietnam and Bangladesh. So this is not you using research, this is you creating research in a process of a co-production. So building capacity and equitable partnerships is a key part of any successful project, and certainly successful proposal. It's got to be overseas development compliant, so only certain countries are eligible. Bangladesh and Vietnam are, so we're in good shape right there. I think that's it. Oh no, one more. We're moving towards impact. GCRF wants its research projects to have broad outcomes that are used and adopted, and therefore enabling progress in both Vietnam and Bangladesh towards the complex development challenges you've got. Aquaculture is happening in areas where there's lots of other challenges and lots of other issues that have to be resolved. How can this research help that? Moving on. It's not just going to happen during the duration of the project. They want to see that these outcomes lead into something, particularly through partnerships that go on to keep giving, so that your institutions in Vietnam and Bangladesh have enhanced capacity really to carry on working in research and innovation. And that's tricky to design in, but I think if we get the networking and the partnership development aspects of the projects right, that will really work. And ultimately, they're going to contribute to these broader sustainable development goals that act to improve well-being and benefits to society in Bangladesh and Vietnam, and not just financial benefits, but broader well-being benefits in an inclusive way. Okay, so that's where we're going. That's our journey. By the end of our Sandpit, we should have outputs, we should have concept notes that have been designed with all of those things in mind. And so let's wish ourselves all a lot of luck.